Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. My name is Artemis, and we are back this week with another really exciting video. I finally got the name of the new Sims pack down pat. It is Cottage Living and not Country Living. This girl's learned that. Um, but in this week's video, we are going to be rebuilding our hippie hideout. And I'm really excited to get started and show you guys the progress because I think the build actually turns out really, really nice. We have some struggles along the way, don't get me wrong. I think I end up using one item that like could have been something else that there's like a proper item for in the game, but you know, your girl was improvising. But yeah, so today's video is going to be broken down into quite a few parts, just based on I don't know, like interest. Like I want to keep you guys engaged. I want to try some new things with every video that I put out. So I'm going to start a new playlist and it is going to be the Hippie Hideout rebuild or remodel or renovation. It'll be named something like that. And it's going to be broken down to probably about 3 or 4 different videos. And I'm going to try and keep them a little bit shorter and do some like talking while we're actually doing things. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. You'll see me struggle with some flooring, the pond tool, and a few other things. Color scheme was an interesting situation. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the build. It turns into a pretty decent farm. This first video is going to be the basic remodeling of the house. So we're expanding it, we're making it bigger. What was once supposed to be a home for maybe 2 or 3 Sims is now going to be a compound. So today's video, major renovations on the actual house. Next week's video will be floor 1 and the patio slash like deck situation, which you'll see coming up shortly. And then I think the final video might be split into 2, it might not, I haven't completely decided yet, but it's the whole upstairs and the finishing touches, doing lighting and checking to make sure that everything is like pretty and lit up at night and all of that fun stuff. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and without any further ado, let us get into it. I don't know why I did that voice. Why do we do weird voices when we record ourselves? Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I decided to do when taking a relook at this build was move it to Henford-on-Bagley. And I said to myself, look, like if this is going to be a cottagey vibe, hippie hideout, kind of compound situation, then first of all, I'm going to need a bigger lot. Second of all, I want it to be in Henford-on-Bagley. So at least if this eventually turns into a Let's Play or something like that, we're in the area of where this is actually going to be going on. You know what I mean? Like where all the fun things are. So as you can see here, I decided to extend the house and just make it bigger. So the initial idea with this house was to have it be for like a mom and her kid starting out on a fresh life and all new things and all that fun stuff. But I kind of thought to myself, you know, it doesn't quite fit the aesthetic. Like, yes, it could have been an escape for one person, but why not make it an escape for multiple people? So the first thing I did was extend everything. I had a hard time deciding whether or not I wanted to keep the color schemes the same. I thought about changing it to a little bit more of like a neutral, more realistic, like farmhouse looking situation. Like this is what I'm doing right here. You can tell that I'm struggling with deciding the colors, but I had looked up original farmhouses, or not original, I don't know, like real life farmhouses, and they all had this like beautiful either white brick or white paneling exterior, lots of columns, a very like forward facing, I don't know, center of attention, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I said, okay, you know, maybe I can like try and incorporate something like that into this build. So I played around a lot with all of the textures and trying to see, okay, does this actually work? Should I do something else? And, you know, spoiler, no spoiler, but we end up going back to the original yellow. While I do kind of like this look where the brick almost looks like it's added on to this house. Like that was my original idea, was farmhouse, but like renovated farmhouse. So you started off with this like 2-story home and you want to turn it into something that's a little bit more fit to be on farmland. So that's what's going on here, is me like fighting with that concept in my head. But it didn't end up working out. And I actually really do like how the yellow ends up looking. I think in the future I will build a farmhouse that is that more like white and black, well, maybe a little black, like white and brown, really neutral beige aesthetic. Maybe we'll do a build like that, but for this one it didn't end up working out that way. Just like I wanted hippie vibes, and white and neutral colors wasn't gonna do it. So eventually I go back to the yellow, and you'll see a lot of greens and browns and fun colors come into play the more that we get on with this build. But for this first section, since we're just kind of like focusing on the physical remodeling of the building, that's basically what our part 1 is all about. That's what we're focusing on here, is like the general aesthetic of the house, and me just trying to make this theme work of having tacked on a farmhouse. So I kind of wanted to do columns here, and I tried to make it work, but because I didn't have a second story on the right hand side, the columns would clip and wouldn't extend past that area. So I think I eventually like very sketchily figured out how I could like make that work, but I got so frustrated with it that I was like, you know what, this is probably not worth it. So sound off in the comments if you have any idea how to make that column on the right hand side work, because that would have been a really fun aesthetic. To basically make it look like the house got expanded upon over time. But instead I did this. Where all of this yellow just ends up coming back, which I ended up really liking. I like the green roof. I like the more like, I don't know, sunflower vibes. I think that's kind of what I was going for here, is you can see I kept those sunflowers on the front of the house. That ends up being one of the only like art pieces that I kept from the original build. But I wanted to make it look more like a farmhouse, like a sunflower farmhouse. So I decided to build this friggin' silo. And yes, we're gonna try and not swear, I guess. But that silo gave me such a headache trying to figure out, 1, how to get the camera to cooperate, but 2, how to get that roof to like blend seamlessly. Like I've been playing Sims for a long time, but this roofing tool makes me miss auto roofing so much. Again, if anybody has tips how to make that look nicer, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, so I basically tack on this silo to the side of the house, and I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna have like farm animals, right? I ended up adding a barn and a chicken coop later. Thank you, Cottage Living, for those items. And yes, Cottage Living, not Country Living. Seems like I can get the pack name right eventually. But yeah, so I ended up adding animals later. So I wanted to have this silo being like, okay, you know, at least it's hay, if not for selling or whatever, it is for the animals. So that seems to be the main structure of the house completed. I wanted to make sure that we had enough like actual farmland on this build. So that's what I'm doing right now, is going through and just taking a look at like the proportions of the house, seeing where I can fit some sort of farmland, like actual crop area, and be able to fit in a patio. So I wanted to do a deck off of this house. And originally I thought about having it having it be a complete wraparound. And I really like that aesthetic. I think it's really nice, but for this build, it wasn't quite gonna work. I feel like it just adds so much bulk to the build when you have it be a completely wraparound deck. So the deck ends up staying like this. I do like it. I think it looks a little strange in the end with like the tile that I picked. Or sorry, the stone that I picked, but it looks good. Like, I like it, but I think I needed to pick a darker stone. So I don't know, maybe in the future I'll go back and change that. But you guys will see that later in the build. This ends up being our, like, most of our crop area. And I decided to go for the oversized because I love the look of these grooves. So this was something that in the original build I had tried to mimic with terrain paint. And I'm just gonna say it. I didn't do a very good job of the terrain paint last time, at least in my opinion. So I'm happy to have these items that actually make the farm aesthetic more realistic. So here I'm fighting with this deck, and I fight with this deck a lot. You'll see me go back and forth trying to adjust like gates and things like that. And fighting with the camera as per usual in The Sims 4. But yeah, you'll see me fight with that deck a little bit later in terms of floor choices. But for now, I'm just going to fight with the gates and see if everything can be like even and equal. Because I hate when things are off-centered. Like, it just drives me bonkers. So I'm like, okay, let's try and get this thing a little bit more centered. So that's what's going on here. Does that bother anybody else? Like, does anybody else have to have everything be like equal and centered and perfect? Or are we all just a little bit OCD? I don't know. I don't know. Tell me. Tell me. But yeah, so that's what's going on here. I think I ended up going back to the original format that I had put down for that grid. So as I mentioned earlier, I said I was going to put those barns down. That's what we're doing here. I decided to add a little bit more of like a pop of color with the blue. And that's something you'll see me pick up inside in, I think, part 2 or part 3 of this video. And yes, there's going to be a part 2 and a part 3 because your girl takes long to build. And I realized that I think shorter videos are probably going to be a little bit of a happier space for all of us that are involved. But yeah, so decided to add that little pop of blue, and we'll pick that up on the inside of this build as well. Now I'm adding a dumpster and all of these like eco-friendly items because the idea with this is to be able to live completely off of the land. So if you have a hippie compound in mind, you probably think of something that's like very far away from the majority of people and, you know, has everything it needs in one spot, like very self-sufficient. So that was my goal with this is, you know, try and give as much as I can for them to be able to survive off of the land. So I think with the crop size that you would yield from this amount of soil in your yard, combined with the eventual pond that will be in the corner and like the animal products and stuff like that, I think it's going to be enough for like food, like to do the simple living challenge. But also with the solar panels and windmill and things like that, I think it'll be good to be like pretty self-sufficient. Now, oh, did I add a water? I did add a water catcher. Okay, I was gonna say, we have our power taken care of. I can't remember if I did the water, but I did. It's like remembering a bin in this situation, or sorry, a garbage for our North American friends, which I'm North American myself, so I don't know why I say that, but I think I just think of like all the other wonderful Sims YouTubers out there when saying bin, because I feel like the majority of them say bin. Anyway, moving on. The fight with that deck is over, thank goodness. Now, here is something I would love some commentary on in the comments. If anybody has tips on how to build beautiful ponds, please let me know. I'm still getting used to this tool. The terrain tool can be a little bit difficult, in my opinion, to navigate. So what I ended up doing was adding water so that I could see how high or low the water is. If you hear anything crazy going on in the background of my voice, my dogs are having some scoots, so you're gonna hear them probably a little bit, but let's let them have fun, shall we? But yeah, so let me know if you have any tips or other YouTubers that do some really beautiful ponds and tutorials or things like that. I'd be super interested because I would love to get better at building or making ponds. Especially with the decoration. Like, I think, like, once you get a good shape down, like, I feel like this one's a little bit too circle. Like, it's a little too perfect. Real life ponds are a little bit more imperfect. But getting the decorations down pat is another thing that, like, I would love some tips on, because while I feel like I did a decent job, and, like, by the end you guys will see what I ended up doing, like, I think I did a decent job. But if there's other ways that, like, people do this, let me know. As you remember, if you've seen my previous video where I called cottage living country living for a good solid 2 hours, you will know that I am very excited to have the pond tool. Like, I'm very, very excited. I miss this. Like, when I first got Sims 4 base game, we're talking, what, 7 years ago now? I immediately wanted to build a house over water and couldn't do it. Went to go look for our beautiful pond tool, didn't exist. Now, it was like that for a lot of features with The Sims 4, that you kind of had to wait for packs to come out, but I think the pond tool was something that I just super wanted, and I'm really happy to have and play around with. What do you guys think should have been in base game? Somebody let me know. What do you think should have been in base game that wasn't? That was not included, and either came to us with an update, with a free update, or came to us with a pack? Yeah, let me know. Anyway, so with this pond, I decided to add some, like, fireflies and cute things like that, because I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more of like a fairy aesthetic. So I added a tree that was really similar to the one from our first build, the lantern tree that we had last time. But since Cottage Living came with this really, I think, wait, did this come with Cottage Living, or was this a base game update, this tree? I can't remember now. Either way, getting this tree, I was so excited to have that little, like, fairy door. So I decided to use this tree instead of the other one, and just kind of add to the fairy, like, flowery aesthetic. I personally really love lavender, so you'll see a lot of lavender in this build, and I feel like for, I don't know, like a hippie farm, that's kind of on brand, like essential oils and herbs and natural things like that. So hopefully that ends up making sense in the long run, but I really like the way that it looks, as well as smells. It's too bad we can't smell our Sims game. But yeah, so I ended up adding a bunch of lavender to this build. I love blues and purples and stuff like that. So while trying to have the yellow and, like, bright sunflower aesthetic, I also wanted to have some, like, more calm areas and more, like, peaceful areas in the build. And I think this pond is one of them. Like, I could see somebody just, like, sitting out here watching the fireflies at night, covered in mosquitoes, getting very itchy. No, I'm kidding. But I could for real see somebody sitting here and, like, little frogs hopping up on the lily pads and the log and things like that. But yeah, I think this ends up turning out nice. I'm gonna end up fiddling around with greenery for another little bit. Like I said, I kind of struggled with the pond, but I don't know, I ended up liking how it looked. I tried to leave a little space at the front for fishing, because once you stock that pond, having that on the lot is actually really good for trying to live off the land. It's like, who doesn't want a nice freshly caught grilled fish for dinner? I do. Oh, also, okay, hold on. Seeing the chicken coop from this angle reminded me, I picked this swatch because it kind of matches our house. I know that's kind of silly, but I picked the yellow and white because that was kind of the aesthetic I was going for the outside of the house. And I was like, man, if I could just blow up this chicken coop and have it be all giant. Oh, wait, that could be a fun video. Anyway, then it might have my Sims live in the chicken coop. No, what nonsense am I babbling on here? Quite a lot of it. That's half the fun of this kind of stuff, though, is, like, having these ideas mid-build and being like, oh man, like, I kind of want to make it look more like this chicken coop. Like, imagine building a house to look, like the chicken coop. Ooh, would be pretty. I don't know. Anyway, it kind of matched, so I added it. I'm a big fan of adding shadows to things with terrain paint, and I actually kind of ran into a bit of a problem with this. As you can see, that terrain height setting box has been following us around in this video for the past little bit. Recording Artemis did not realize that that was happening, and I think it ended up messing up my terrain a little bit, because you'll see in a couple of minutes, I think, if I end up leaving it in the video, I go to save the build and the terrain paint disappears. So I had to completely stop filming, redo all the terrain paint, and come back to it. So I don't know if anybody else has experienced a glitch like that, where the terrain height setting box ends up sticking around on your screen and like fiddling with things. But let me know if it has, and let me know if that's a reported glitch that anybody knows about, because I'd be curious as to how that happened, and how it ended up taking away my terrain paint. That was kind of weird. But anyway, I ended up putting it back, and actually, at the end of the video, not this video, but like one of the future parts that I will show you of this build, I end up having to go back and re-edit all of that terrain paint because I didn't like it. Like, you'll see a part of me just sitting there erasing, like erasing the terrain paint. But I do like adding shadows and things like that to builds. So that's why you'll see me go around and like do things like this, where like I literally just go and like boop right underneath items, and just make it look, I don't know, like a little bit more lived in, a little bit more walked on, a little bit more like it's rained. So yeah, you'll see right here, that it is completely gone. But yeah, so that is the build. The terrain paint completely disappeared. And will Artemis ever be happy with her terrain paint again? Tune in next time. Okay, but for real, will I actually ever fall in love with terrain paint again? Probably not. Probably not. But I hope you guys enjoyed the build so far. I think it's turning out nice. I have actually gone back and added the terrain paint that went missing somewhere when I saved there. So when we come back for the next part of the video, which again is going to be the first floor and the deck. So when we come back, that terrain paint will actually be there. I didn't like re-record myself doing that because I thought that would be a little bit tedious. Just a little bit tedious. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed it so far. We are going to be sticking with the yellow and green color scheme. The inside's going to be a little bit interesting. Like on the first floor, there's a kitchen, a communal bathroom, one bedroom, and a living space. So that's going to be in the next video. We don't really touch the upstairs until about the third video. So hopefully y'all have patience and you do want to see how the rest of this build turns out. I think it turns out nice. I said that a bunch of times already, so I'm not going to say it again. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notifications if you enjoy my content here on YouTube. I'm getting more comfortable with this, so I think there shall be some more content coming your way. Friendly reminder, I do stream on Twitch, and currently my schedule is looking like Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern. So feel free to come and hang out with me. We do have some pretty cozy, chaotic vibes going on, and it is just twitch.tv/Artemis Awakens, and you shall see me and get to talk to me and hang out and get to know me a little bit better. So hopefully I'll see you guys, but if not, that's okay. I'll catch you in the next video. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye.